Yeah, so did you have a present?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's get started. It is the Sarah Stevenson's Tuesday morning forum. As my man Winston would say, it's Big Time Tuesday at the Sarah Stevens. I am again Robert Collins. I am along with other facilitators. I have a list this time. I can tell y'all everybody's name. I have Miss Laura McClay, Miss Carlinia Ivory Canty, Miss Jackie Edwards Walton, Miss Natalie McElrath. Let me tell y'all right now so you know what's going on. Miss Natalie is our timekeeper. If this is your first time, you see that? When she says time, that means stop talking and put the mic down if you have the mic. When she says 30 seconds, respect her 30 seconds, because if you do not, she will let you know the time is up very swiftly. All right, we have Miss Mary Johnson, Mr. Shea Abdullah over there in the corner. We have myself, Jasmine Wright, Gary Young, Saritha Sherrill, Dr. Blanche Penn, not in here just yet, Tina Marshall, Mr. Steve Johnson, the man. And then on the keys, you have Dr. Thomas Moore. Today we have Miss Ashley that's coming to town to speak to us, and Mr. Robert, who you all should know very well. We're going to be talking about data centers today. What I want to do first, before we get into a prayer, is first I want to say, do we have any first-time guests? If you do, please put a hand up. I'm going to come around and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what got you to come here, and you can give us a fun fact they like to say, as the kids say at school.
My name is Alberta Bowens. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm here visiting my son, James Sumter, and I love to dance.
All right. Give us some, Dr.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gerard Bridgers. I'm the founder of a new nonprofit called Brothers of Sin Incorporated. I was invited by Winston Robinson.
All right, give us your fun fact. Come on, give us one.
Fun fact. Let's see. Almost drowned twice.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lanice. I am also a new founder of a new nonprofit. It's called the Rally Initiative. I have a background in beauty, and I am trying to open up a hair school here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm originally from Baltimore, so I've been in the beauty industry for over 20 years, and my background is in like consulting and AI integration.
All right. Anyone else for the first time? She said she's been here before, Miss Jackie. All right, so now that we have an introduction to everybody, if you will, Reverend, come on up. And we're going to get this morning started with a prayer. Now everybody's been welcome. We're going to get a good prayer.
Sir, that's not Reverend. I'm sorry, only the bishop can elevate someone. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you once again for this opportunity to be in your presence, Lord. Lord, we thank you for those individuals thought it not robbery to get up this morning to attend this session, those that were heavily involved yesterday with the city council meeting and initiatives that went on. They rose this morning to come here as a community once again to hear the affairs that are going on. Lord, we just thank you for the speakers that are gathered here to present information that will not only educate us, but also stir us up, or to get involved and be engaged in what's going on in our community. And God, as we do each and every week, Lord, we just ask that you just continue to bless each one of these facilitators that give tirelessly of their time each and every week, Lord. They bring us constructive, productive programming that will benefit us all. These and other blessings we ask in your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patton. So as you just heard my phone go off, we're going to take this moment to give everybody a moment of silence. Go ahead and mute your phones, if you will, please. And also, just want to make sure that everyone knows, especially for our first-time guests, the way the SIP will run this morning is they'll have an opportunity to speak. When they finish speaking, we'll take questions from the audience. Just put your hand up. One of us will recognize you, and we'll put you on the list. You don't have to keep putting your hand up. We'll get you on the list. As soon as your turn comes, we'll bring a microphone to you so you'll have an opportunity to ask your question. People, as she always says, come and leave respectfully. If you're leaving, just slide on out the back door. The bathrooms are right around this corner if you need one. I've been asked that many times. And we're gonna get started. You guys have about 5 minutes apiece. That's good? Getting started?
That's
Nothing? That's good? Or do you need more time?
I thought she was gonna do a she wanted to do a presentation.
Okay, you got it. Does he have it?
You have a presentation ready for us over there? Yeah. All right, well. On you.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody, how you doing? So, normally I'm sitting up here by myself and I'm preaching to you about some issue that I think is important, I need to rally you behind and get you to work on. But today is different, and today I wanted to introduce our intern that we have here at Action NC, has been working with us this summer, and she's going to talk to you about a subject that she's been working on for us. And I hope that people will still remember she's an intern, not a organizer for trade, so let's not beat on her too hard if you are supportive or not supportive of the issue. I got it. I know, Ken, you're the main one I'm coming to. So it's my pleasure to introduce our intern, Ashley Meier. She's a student at Princeton University, and we were blessed that she came home this summer. And while she was here, she was dedicated and said she wanted to delve into the data center issue, a little different than us, than just on the policy side. She wanted to make sure that she was educating the community. So what she's been working on is putting together a toolkit for high school and college students. And as soon as she finishes this in the next few weeks, we'll be releasing it. And I'm hoping people like Councilman Graham and all from JCSU will help us get this out to like HBCUs. I think it's a lot of information that college students and high school students can use to form their own opinions on data centers and what the future data centers look like. So I'm going to be quiet and turn it over to Ashley Meier.
Great. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I hope you guys are doing well. My name is Ashley Meier, and I will be talking to you about data centers and the current landscape in Charlotte right now. So I want to talk to you about the reason we're talking about this. Of course, there's the growth of AI, but also just as more users on the internet, more powerful tools, there is a big demand for the construction of data centers, an unprecedented demand. In fact, North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the whole country, and it's difficult to slow this construction. There's a lot of barriers with state law in terms of what the local governments can reasonably do. And so I think it's important to understand the environmental and political landscape and economic states at hand today. So let's quickly take a look at the map. Currently there are 35 data centers in Charlotte, followed by Raleigh and Greensboro. And this is a lot of data centers. As you can see, it's not very evenly distributed throughout the state. And there's also something called the invisible inventory, which is basically that there are more kind of undocumented data centers, and these are older facilities. And so they're kind of considered light industrial zoning and not necessarily these standalone. Yes.
Slow down.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep it under 20 minutes.
You're standing in front of you.
Okay, I see. So there.
She sits down. She can do whatever. Starts camera. If you want, you can sit.
Okay, sounds good. So it's just not necessarily considered this standalone server infrastructure. So they cluster in Charlotte, mainly in the Second Ward and Uptown area. I would say has the majority of the data centers, and then also the region kind of near the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. So I want to talk about different types of data centers. They're not all the same. They're not all these big hyperscale data centers I would think of that are controlled by Meta and Microsoft and Google. There are a lot of different types, and all of them have different drawbacks and different concerns that arise with them. So the biggest one that is most well known are the big hyperscale data centers. That's going to have the majority of the water consumption and energy consumption. And then the smallest kind of, footprint would be the home-based and residential data centers. But there are also things like co-location data centers, which is where multiple businesses rent out the space within a building and have their own servers. And then the financial sector, banks are gonna own their own data centers that's going to process your bank information, but also have payment processors, handle insurance information. So it stores a lot of data. Quickly looking at the energy demands, data centers do use a lot of energy. It's enough to power a small city. And originally, data centers only took up about 2% of total the world's total energy consumption. In the next 5 to 10 years, that's expected to rise anywhere from 13 to a third of the world's total energy consumption. So it's just very energy intensive. AI searches use 1,000 times more power than standard Google searches. All right, so there is a lot of rising strain. As we know, Duke Energy has a monopoly over North Carolina power sources, and they've had a lot of controversies, so we can't just leave it up to them. I mean, one thing that I remember is when they used to use coal ash on the bases of the Lake Norman houses, and that caused thyroid cancer. So one, strain on the Duke Energy sources is going to strain the entire state, and also they are regulated, but we want to make sure there's a lot more community and government input in terms of how they address these data centers. And so hot zones are areas that are more prone to strain and more prone to outages. So these are going to be areas like the Charlotte Metro, just because of the vast amount of people that are moving here and businesses. These are places like the Research Triangle because they have a lot of labs and research facilities, and they're going to use a lot of power. And then also Western North Carolina, just because they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to restore these outages very efficiently. I'm going to talk about the 4 categories of risk, which I'm sure you guys are all, kind of aware of in terms of the drawbacks of data centers, just health-wise, water-wise, land-wise, and economic-wise. So the health hazards, the water pollution, air pollution is kind of what you would expect from a power plant. Is there's going to be a lot of wastewater. This wastewater is going to be contaminated. There's a town in Wyoming. They, noted this pollutant in the water that was making people sick. So, this wastewater can carry heavy metals, biocides, a lot of construction chemicals. The air pollution, if they're relying on fossil fuels, which a lot of data centers are, it's going to have a lot of carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide pollutants. There's noise pollution, and this is kind of unique in the fact that this is caused by the HVAC systems, and they have this low frequency hum, and that can reach the residences that are nearby. That can cause chronic stress, sleep deprivation, and there's the heat island effect, where the data centers raise ground temperatures up to properties around 6 miles away, and they can raise it by up to 16 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's talk about the HVAC systems. So the HVAC systems, there's 2 main types. There's a bunch of specific types under these main categories, but the most well-known ones, there's first the closed loop system. So the closed loop system, it continuously circulates the same water coolant through a network of pipes, and this removes the heat. And the benefit of a closed loop system is that it reuses water. So although this water is not necessarily drinkable, they're able to kind of keep it within the system. Now, evaporated systems, which are kind of more popular, I guess, this passes warm air over water or wet cooling pads, and as it evaporates, it cools the air. The problem with this is, the air, once it cools, it's blown through like fans. Once it cools the servers, it's let out as exhaust, and this water is not reused. And so that's what the stigma of data centers using so much, water comes from, is because of these HVAC systems, But the problem with closed loop systems is they're a lot more energy intensive because it relies on refrigerants, so it has to, cool the water even though it's being able to reuse the water. In terms of evaporative systems, this is a big threat to water availability. So Google, for some reason, loves to build their data centers in very drought-prone regions, including the Dalles, Oregon, Arizona, Utah, Texas, and so they're facing a lot of local supply issues. And there's a county in Georgia, Newton County, they lost 30 million gallons of water because of the data center, and that, caused the faucets to trickle because they lost a lot of water pressure. And so what do we want data centers to do to address that? In terms of their HVAC cooling systems, different communities have different needs, of course. And so we also want them to look at, the current temperature, because higher temperatures are going to need HVAC systems a lot more. But also, think of summertime. A lot of people are going to be in their houses. They're going to have the AC on. That's going to need a lot more power. And so you don't want to strain the energy grid, with something as closed loop cooling, which needs a lot of power in, the summertime. And so that means it's not a lot more prone to outages. My home just experienced an outage a couple of weeks ago for no reason. It's like it's the middle of summer, there's no bad weather, what's going on? So you don't want to strain the energy grid more. So they need to coordinate with water companies or water utilities, energy companies to really evaluate needs. And there are more efficient cooling methods, of course, but just not having anything that's water intensive in a drought prone region or energy intensive when a grid is already strained. So briefly, there's a lot of ecosystem destruction, and then the agriculture is under pressure just because North Carolina is known for having miles and miles of farmland, and that's the perfect target for developers because they want a lot of big, expansive land. And so North Carolina is losing a lot of farmland. This means less local food supply. My grandma loves going to farmers markets. That means less farmers markets. Restaurants that source from there, they lose their food supplier. Just less quality of food, especially because we're already going through a lot of kind of food issues in the U.S. and recalls. So things such as equipment dealers, grain elevators, feed stores, they're going to go out of business. And when it's a lot of equipment and machinery, those buildings often aren't able to be repurposed for other things, so they're kind of just left abandoned. And then also data centers building on agricultural land, that's just permanent damage because of all the pollution. Economically, there's few permanent jobs, only about 20 to 100 after construction and things like that. It targets a lot of under-resourced areas because they can buy out those, and there's less kind of economic and political backing in those areas in terms of just the power they have. Causes your property values to fall because it's like nobody wants to live near a telephone line because they might cause cancer or something like that. Nobody wants to live near a data center. It's going to cause a higher cost of living, and I'll cover this more later just because you're shouldering the energy costs. And then of course there's the grid. You're competing for just energy. So let's talk about Charlotte's moratorium. So that was passed June 8th, and it's 150 days, meaning it's going to last until November. And that's just giving us time to evaluate local law or state laws and develop local policies, conduct more research in terms of what our community can handle, what our community needs are, except it doesn't address the two data centers that are currently being built because they were kind of already approved before then, and those are two really big projects. And so that is the Powerhouse Data Center, which is the University City project, and Digital Realty. And these are really big projects, and it shows just our fragmented zoning authority as well as just issues with things being approved before then. I think it's considered part of the county, not the city, or things like that. So there's a lot of hurdles that the government has to deal with. And then what's happening between now and November, there's going to be a task force. This is just a team of technical experts, community members. They're going to propose policies over a series of 7 meetings. There's public education and outreach materials that they should be developing. I'm not sure where they will be. There's public meetings. I think there'll be 6 during September. Those will be virtual and in person. And then a public hearing where they're going to, the task force will present their political recommendations or policy recommendations, and then residents will be able to give feedback. I do want to highlight the Ratepayer Protection Act. And so this was a Senate bill. It was a proposed state law that passed in the North Carolina House on June 3rd, but then it was sent back to the Senate and referred to the committee on June 8th, and it has not become law. There are a lot of benefits of this act. I think there's a lot of edits people were kind of debating about, but the main highlights of it is that developers will pay the way, so hopefully residents won't shoulder the cost of the higher energy bills. Developers will pay for that themselves and coordinate with electricity companies, yay, Duke Energy, and then there will be no eminent domain, so the government cannot claim land for data centers. They can't provide tax breaks for companies, and site assessments will be required on things such as pollution, on things such as just noise and contaminants and things like that to make it healthy for citizens. And then closed loop cooling to cut down on water intake. So the main ways you can get involved is we need research, because in order to develop effective policy, you need to know what the most effective methods are in terms of HVAC systems. If you have any connections with universities, you can encourage students to look into more efficient HVAC systems. We also don't want something like closed loop cooling, and we find out it causes a disease or something like that. We don't want to implement policy that will have bad long-term effects, negative long-term effects. And then, of course, civic action. We don't necessarily need a bunch of protesters, but we do need you guys to attend the August 20th coalition meeting and partner with younger advocates for outreach and organizing. You can put in public comments. You can push for the Ratepayer Protection Act and then vote on effective policies. So, any questions?
Come on, now, get it going.
Robert, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Yep.
The microphone.
Well, no, I left that one off. We're saving energy here. So, one, I want to give it up because Ashley spent the majority of her summer digging into this instead of being out taking advantage of her break. And I've gotten, I think, as much out of this as I would expect for sometimes from city staff. So I wanted to say that. Yeah. Second, I wanted to highlight two things before we go any further and you ask questions. One, I want to highlight the fact that Councilmember Mayfield is here, and back 3 years ago, before Morrisville started construction, Councilwoman Mayfield said, we don't know a lot about data centers, but there's a lot more to know before we move forward on this project. She asked the city for clarity. She asked the company that was going to do the work for clarity. They said at the time, don't worry on these certain things, water, environmental impacts. In fact, we're going to get back with you. That never happened, and it got approved. So I want to say thank you to Councilwoman Mayfield for being the first person to point out that we have issues with data centers. And I also see that, Representative Lopez is here. I want to take the moment to thank Representative Lopez, because when we're talking about the Ratepayer Act, as Ashley mentioned, it is a good legislation in some pieces, but it's bad in others. And there's always sometimes that when you get policy, the trade-off isn't always worth it. So Representative Lopez was one of the first people to stand up and say, yes, we're going to make ratepayer, we're going to make some changes in here, but it's at the cost of giving Duke Energy probably 100 more years to build a new power nuclear plant before they have to make any changes. So I just want people to understand that when it comes to policy, sometimes there's good pieces and there's bad pieces, and you have to weigh it out. And my two examples was, again, when Councilwoman Mayfield said, you're going to get some employment out of this, you're going to get something, but we want to know the impacts, and we never heard anything back when we moved forward. And how Representative Lopez is one of the people standing in the way, even though it may sound like Ratepayer Act is good, the provisions that would give Duke Energy the ability to keep coal-fired plants going until they build a new nuclear reactor. And to build a nuclear reactor, they started work on that next year. it would still be 20 years before it was operational. So I just wanted people to know that. And again, I want to thank Ashley for, she could have come home from Princeton this summer. Well, I know she did her first part, she went to Africa. She came back from Africa. She came straight work here, so she's not spent any time enjoying being young. So we do appreciate all the work that she does. I think she goes back to Princeton in 2 weeks.
Next week.
Yes. Well, I guess I gotta finish up and do your report before you go. I do appreciate your help. Kid. Easy kid.
This is phenomenal, exceptional, and only a sophomore, rising sophomore in college. And congratulations, young lady. And in 10 years, you'll be back and hopefully you'll run for city council or mayor. And that they will elect you. And I hope it won't be too late to stop these dang data centers. My question to you is, with all of this Ratepayer Protection Act, if it passes, and that still doesn't mitigate the overall negative impact, and the general sentiment is not in my backyard and not in my state. So even if we are successful, wherever they go, the negative impact is still going to be the same. As you read city council, how do you feel, what kind of feedback might you and Bobby be getting in terms of your presentations? Or have they even seen your presentation? Have they seen your presentation?
No, sir. Could you repeat your question?
Right.
I heard the first part.
No,
Like,
it was about mitigation. Because if all of this is in place, the Taxpayer Act, would that even ultimately mitigate the negative impact of what these data centers would do?
I don't know. Okay, with advancing technology, there's always a negative impact, of course. I think the ultimate goal would just be to, of course, lessen the effects. And so this would be with, making power and water use more efficient based on, the climate and environment. But I mean, I think we can just look at technology in general and, our power in general and look at, it's destroying the earth, but we have the benefit of accessible technology, which has made our lives a lot more convenient. And so I think being realistic about changes to data centers and making them more efficient as possible would be the goal. Yes, it will have a net impact on the environment, but we need to, just prioritize how we can, mitigate that, of course. Is there anything more specific you're looking for? Sorry.
No, I'm just waiting on them to say no.
Good morning, and thank you. Over here. I have, I guess, a two-part question. If data centers are just that data, could they not be placed anywhere in the country? And also, can they not use salt water?
Oh, for the cooling? Okay, I'm not an expert on the HVAC systems, but in terms of placing it anywhere in the country, they are going to target, putting it in proximity to, if we looked at the clusters in Charlotte, it's near a lot of banks, it's near the airport, they're going to place it near areas that, have a lot of land, of course, so they can build it. But like, you can't put a big data center in the middle of New York City, of course, but also putting it in proximity to businesses that will rely on it. So if it's near all the banks, like the banks are gonna need something to deal with all their computing, to deal with all the information it's processing. So it can't necessarily be built anywhere, just like a power plant can't be built anywhere just because it needs to be in proximity to the things that rely on it. And then salt water, I'm not sure about.
So I think that was a great question. So again, don't forget we talked about different types of data centers. I think specifically when we're talking about this issue, we're talking hyperscale. If we move from hyperscale to some of the smaller ones, like if we move to edge, which are smaller facilities that would be able to be placed in different places, they would be able to be spread out more places. But your main question, and again, this came up when I first got started, and I'm glad that Councilwoman Owens came in, because this is one of the questions that we talked about there, security. So a lot of folks do not want our data centers. We could put data centers in China. We could do that. But then we're talking about sharing our data in locations that we can't control. That's one. The second thing is latency. So latency is how fast the data gets back and sent to you. Banks and things want the latency to be close. And the latency to us doesn't sound like a lot. We're not engineers. So if somebody says it's going to take 0.0000 of a second to get to you versus 0.00 of a second, that's not a lot. But it's a lot if you depend on latency. So if you're like, I'll give you an example. Waymos depend on latency. So if this is separate than the data center, but just a latency question. So if the Waymo can't get the information from the system quick enough and it's spinning, they don't realize it's getting ready to drive you into the lake. By the time you decide to figure out it was driving you into the lake, you're already in the lake. So the two biggest issues on that is security of your data and latency, the amount of time to do it. As far as putting them offshore, we have another issues with that. Salt water and stuff could be used for cooling, but there's another line of environmental questions that comes with it. And then at the same kind of questions that came up with us doing offshore drilling, we have all of these other things. So in Charlotte specifically, I don't want to take up time, the only thing that we can control at the Charlotte City Council level, which is where we're working right now, is land use. So that's the battle in Charlotte right now, is land use. At the state level, with Jordan, there's been stuff like tax breaks. Can data centers get tax breaks? So it's multifaceted on different levels, and I see from the Alma's office is here, they have their own issues. So it's a multi-tiered thing, but Charlotte gets a lot of the heat when really the only thing that they can control right now is land use zoning for that. Does that answer it? Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, so good to see you again, Robert.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to separate the issue because we've had what I call data banks. Individual companies have data banks. They have not been a problem. But when we talk about the data centers, we're talking about these very large ones. So I'm addressing data centers. And I don't see a need for data centers. I don't have a problem getting my transactions processed at my bank timely. I don't know anything that's happening today that is delayed because we don't have enough data storage. Data centers are needed for AI. Do we need AI? To me, to build data centers is like feeding that baby tiger that's going to eat you once he gets grown. And that's what we would be doing, building these huge data centers. Now, if I'm wrong, I would like someone to tell me what is the advantage to me on just my daily life to building a data center that's going to harm me eventually. Why not wait until we have a better way of doing it? Why not have any data centers until we know how to build them?
So telling companies to stop building data centers until we have a better method is just kind of telling them to slow down their technology. Yes, data centers are used for AI. That is what is, takes up a lot of the power, but it's also used to, store, or, it's used for cloud computing a lot. It's used to, of course, yes, store your pictures, yes, store your emails, yes, store all this information. And with the growing number of users and the growing number of powerful tools, I don't want to say we can't stop building data centers, but not building more data centers to accompany the amount of information being processed will mean that information will be processed slower. It will kind of take away, some of the features and things like that. So we just need more, centers just to process all this information. In terms of AI, yes, you're right. They're going to eat up a lot of power and water, and that is going to drive up a big need for data centers. And so right now we have very powerful tools, and they're the thing is they're continuing working on it. I can't tell you anything about stopping it completely, but with them developing greater tools, it's creating greater need for these gigantic centers.
And Mr. Carroll, I want to say so. Us on the activist side normally are either for something or we're against something. When it comes to AI, this is going to be popular with folks here. AI has its place, but people have to make sure that AI is working within boundaries that they need. So if I can take 75 years of medicine and research that in a split time for a doctor then to continue their search for a cure for cancer, then I would want that ability to be able to do it. But I don't want it to replace the doctor. And for us, I think also, like for minority communities, AI is an equalizer on that piece too, if we control it and figure out how to do it. The problem is in society taking things and turning it into something that it shouldn't be used for, but that's all around, you know what I mean? So like, while I get calls every day saying, Robert, what are y'all gonna do about AI in data centers? Like, folks are always like, what are we gonna do about the data center for security? Well, I need to worry about that, but I need to worry about the flock camera. I need to worry about all of the different instances and not just the vehicle that it's stored in. I believe in her lifetime, most AI things are going to be done satellite-based, where it's cooled in space. It doesn't require time, but we got to get there. But I do think that as we move forward, we can't discredit everything about AI for the bad things that AI do. So that's again, like my wife works for Wells Fargo. She always works for Wells Fargo. Me as an activist, I'm always gonna say, Wells Fargo robbed and took people's land, and they started the security industry, and started the repeater rifle, and they did lots and lots and lots of bad things. But Wells Fargo's in our community. You see my point? So I don't want to stop, because everything that we've seen in every invention of medicine has been pretty similar to AI. It's how do we harness it and use it? If not, we're going to be left behind. And if we do not use it, not only are we going to be left behind, but we're leaving a lot of scientific and medical advancement on the table.
And don't forget, AI Fruit Soap Opera is amazing. We got a question from William Davis.
Good morning. I'm William Davis, CEO of the WD Foundation. Before I started my foundation, I worked 42 years as a nuclear engineer. And I'm here to tell you, the data centers are here. They're going to be here to stay. I've observed the technology over the 40 years, and it started out the same way. I heard the same argument in 1970 and 80. But you have to have faith that the technology is going to change and meet the demands that the people have right now. And so my question is, how is this organization going to redirect their strategy? Because the data centers are here and they're coming. Because if you don't want a data center, you're going to throw away your laptop, you're going to throw away your telephone, and this younger generation, hey, that's it, So the older, like a lot of the older folks, but my question was, how do you redirect your strategy?
Well, good. I'm glad you got that. So one, we're not redirecting our strategy, because our strategy was never anti-data center. Our strategy's always been mitigating the damages of data centers. So what we want is, one, we're working on now what we call the People's Data Center Ordinance, where we brought in all kinds of different folks, whether they're subject matter experts, groups, or private people, and what we're coming up with how we want to see it mitigated. One of the things we can tell you from the beginning is we're never going to be a fan of hyperscale data centers. We believe that data center work can be done specifically with edge and co-location data centers. And that's where the least amount of harm is, and we believe that's where we should spend our effort. We also believe that if data centers are going to be there, that there should be community benefit. One of the main ways through community benefit that we're looking at is the smallest form of data center, which is called storage rooms. If we can harness storage rooms and people can use their ability to have data centers in a controllable environment in their house that offsets their electric bill, and they receive a monthly check for the amount of time that they're doing, we think that that's something that should be explored. But we believe that the city has to regulate it the same way that they regulate Airbnb, because then folks just decide I'm going to turn all rental properties into data center, small storage rooms. So we believe that this is going to happen. We believe that there's a way to mitigate it, and we believe that there should be community benefit associated with it. So we're not anti-data center, but we want everybody to be able to be the data center police.
Good morning again. We know AI is not going anywhere, but I heard you say that there's a moratorium on decisions on proposals going forward. Are we able to leverage or glean anything from national best practices, or do we feel like the governance under the current administration is probably not as good as it needs to be?
Yeah, so again, I know folks say that most of the time when it comes to me, I don't give government a fair shake, and I'm always here to say what's wrong or what's bad about it. But there have been, again, folks like Jordan on the state level have made some changes already around data centers that we are happy with. We've done away now, I think Jordan just passed recently, the data centers tax break for electricity has been removed. They still get their discount on equipment, but the tax break on electricity was huge. City level, things have been progressive. City has 150 days. First 75 days were for them to do their research. Next 75 is for them to get community input. One of the main things that we were happy about the city's effort was that they partnered with World Resource Institute. That's probably the leading institute around the world on data centers, in AI, in home mitigating tactics. So we were really happy when we saw that they brought in WRI into that process. Our advocates from Clean Air North Carolina and from Southern Environmental Law Center have been working with city staff. So we are happy that from the environmental aspect and from the world resource best practice asset, the city at this point has been open to listening to those. We'll see what happens and come off of the ordinances that come from it, but they have been open to best practices in environmental consulting.
Good morning. I'm Darnell. You kind of answered the question. I had a question, but I think you've answered it. But with her presentation, Ashley's presentation, I mean, when you hear ecosystems, the threat to water and availability, wildlife habitats are affected, raises risk of flooding, agriculture under pressure, big footprint, small return in terms of jobs. What I was going to ask is what specifically, based on your research, is the position that you want us to take in meetings to defend or support feasibility of data centers systems? And when you mentioned going into HBCUs, how is this presentation going to be presented to the, you talked about mitigating feasibility, so maybe that's the answer. I'm just wondering, what is our position?
Our position in terms of ecosystems is prioritizing land that doesn't have a lot of wildlife and plant life, of course. And in terms of student education, colleges, I think Mr. Dawkins told me colleges can have a lot of leverage. They can advocate for employment opportunities for students, internship opportunities, and also we want research, students doing research because colleges have research programs, and so we want them looking further into the effects, building trackers, looking into how much our environment can handle. We want the engineers looking at more effective HVAC systems. So we want colleges to, colleges can take a stand in terms of how data centers affect and build on their property, have a relationship with the school, because universities are going to have a lot of power. They they just have a lot of power. They're going to want to build data centers kind of near universities, probably also if there's a lot of land nearby. And so just encouraging research and encouraging relationships with the businesses will be very important in terms of the universities. And in terms of the ecosystems, I'm not an expert on, of course, learning how to mitigate the damages from that if they're just constructing. I would say just prioritizing spaces that are not, just like, maybe building on land of abandoned buildings already could be a strategy instead of just, going to farms and doing that. We have a lot of abandoned places in North Carolina. So, just prioritizing that before we get to, the big acres of farmland and tearing that down because those are kind of the few natural spaces remaining.
And then real quick, Ms. Harvey, the last thing I'll say on that is I think that we have an opportunity to harness these different colleges that they're known for being able to now come up with a new track. I think that Johnson C. Smith, as a research university, could be involved in data center work as we start to build things out. I mean, I really do think, Johnson C. Smith could be a leader in this, the same way that they're doing NASCAR and they're doing things like that. They could, take an active role in this. But the biggest piece is I think that we have a responsibility to try to set the foundation so that young people aren't facing harm from data centers and AI on our watch. But I think that they need to start taking a look at what they want to see AI and data centers being over the next 50 years because it impacts their life. So we're trying to push the leaders of tomorrow to make this an issue that they care about now.
Ashley, Ashley, special commendations to you on a job well done on this report. I'm so very proud of you. I'm a former educator, and I work for my CEO. He's my former 7th grade student. I love ChatGPT. It does a lot. I do emails for him, and you tell Chat what you want, and Chat spits the information out to you. The challenge for high school students and college students, that's a very helpful tool. The only thing that you got to remember, plagiarism, you can't just copy verbatim, but you can get ideas from ChatGPT. What are you putting in the NC School Kit for high school and college students?
Yeah, I think you actually raised something is that I didn't include a lot of things on like kind of AI educational tools just because I focused it mainly on data centers. And so I think a lot of it is just, what's in this presentation in terms of, the current policy landscape, the community and research needs. But I think you did raise an important, point is that schools also need to develop better policy in terms of, not just blockers on ChatGPT, because I think it's good, especially for elementary education, because they need critical reading and writing skills, and they can't just rely on these very powerful tools. But I think something my friend researched at school is just when we look at AI educational tools, we really need to, educate them young, not on like, you guys need to learn AI, but in terms of just like how it works. Because with AI, your writing style changes, and I probably noticed it with myself too, even like when I just be drafting emails and then I might plug it in to just redo it, and then I'm just like, okay, my writing style is gonna start to change the more I look at AI's writing. And so, but first, I don't know about full adoption, especially in younger grades, but educating students on how it works in terms of the biases in it, in terms of the best methods to use it, in terms of, computer science majors, of course, learning the basic skills and then able to, adopt it into your workflow, but also know how to fact check AI is very important. And so this stuff I didn't include in my educational packet, mainly because it's focused on data centers, but I definitely agree that it's very important.
I'm so glad that you admitted that us in our generation do it, because we're really hard on young people and we use it. Ashley brought up something that was really important that I see when using AI. And it has to be controlled, because I can type in right now, give me the best data center information that I can to give to Councilwoman Owens on it. It would not know to go and look at Charlotte specific. It would not go and look and see that Charlotte defined data centers 6 years ago. It wouldn't know the difference between Charlotte's responsibilities at first glance and what is county related. So you have to take it, as you were saying, as a prompt to help you build upon. And I think that's really important, because I see it a lot. Folks will hand me stuff and I will know a lot of time, because it doesn't have the personal level, because it doesn't have the knowledge base of the context coming from Charlotte. It's just, here's your data center report. They should try to do this. And then I look and be like, well, Jordan introduced this 2 years ago, but AI didn't know it. You see my point? And again, the other piece, like, for my nephew that goes to the University of South Carolina, the software that they're using now on him, he was flagged, and it wasn't AI, but he was flagged, I guess maybe because of what she was saying, from using AI, his writing language didn't match up with how the professor of the software figured, and then he had to spend time proving it was his work. Because now the AI detectors are looking for stuff that where sometimes you get caught up and you got to justify this was me and not you using AI.
Morning, and I appreciate the sentiment you had just like 10 minutes or so earlier about the issue, especially on city council, being the management of the land use. And just a quick question as well, how do you balance like being proactive with that land, managing that land use with the data centers being built, especially on, frankly, these companies that buy up that land most of the time and buy up a huge portion of those acres that disproportionately affect the communities, the farmers in the area, the neighborhood and communities there, and trying to not be as reactive with, buying up that management of that land use.
So the good thing about being an activist, as Kim says sometimes, I just beat on council, and I beat on business. I just beat everybody and say, I'm gonna keep beating until you come up with an answer. But no, I think the main thing was having to figure out which different pockets there were to work on. And then from those pockets, then building advocacy around what you're trying to organize to do. So with us at Action NC, we said we're going to spend time on land use right now. Our first step's going to be land use. So we're going to just concentrate on mitigating that damage. And what we saw there was we needed an advocacy piece, which would be dealing with the city council and saying this is what we're advocating for. We're going to need to do an educational piece, and we've been trying to put out essays and all of that. We brought in Ashley to start building an education piece. We knew there was going to have to be mobilization involved to where we were going to go do it. But what we haven't done a good job on, and I will always point out where we haven't done a good job, is coming up. We've come up with some solutions on the advocacy piece. But for your piece, how do we go and talk to businesses and say, this is what you should be doing, this is what you know? We haven't grown to that point, and that's where we lack. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because we need to always point out when we're making a campaign, where are some areas we need to work on. And we need to move more from our advocacy, just beating on city council and saying, mitigate it, to going out and talking to Bank of America's and Wells Fargo's and all that and say, what is your plan for mitigating and how can we be involved with that? So I will admit that's our sharp part.
All right, I have a question up there. So earlier when you mentioned that the proximity of the data centers matter for, those latency. So it made me think about Dan Spivey in 2010. This is a man who built an underground fiber optic line between Chicago and New Jersey just for 3 milliseconds, and he leased access to that line. So now I see myself in a city full of banks in this industry. I'm sure they would all kind of think to that point. So my question is there, the conversation about data centers seems so all-encompassing. Is there a Toyota Prius for a data center that would at least make us feel better about how we engage them? Or is it just this massive thing that just exploits and consumes?
Yeah, I think Ashley really spent a good amount of time on this. The city council's talked about it. Hyperscales is the largest piece. It provides you with the biggest bang for your buck, but it's not the best for the environment. We at HNC are really fans of what's called edge data centers, which are about the size of a tractor trailer truck. And they can be located all throughout the city. It also solves one other piece, not putting all giant hyperscale data centers in low to moderate income black neighborhoods. If we went edge, think about where we see these smaller electric substations all over the city. South Park Mall, there's an electric substation right there in the mall. Edge data centers can look really nice. Some countries have them where they're clear. So you look in and you see all the lights going beep, 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 and they color and graphic and make it look nice. They would be spread out all over Charlotte. It would fix the latency problem because South Park is getting it super quick because it's located right there in South Park. Uptown already has these. You don't have a hyperscale center uptown. You've got a ton of edge and co-location data centers already in Charlotte. A lot of them, we didn't even know where they were until like Clayton Sealy and other folks started flying drones over buildings to try to locate them. But there's the new one that's getting ready to be built in the old building that's gonna be an edge data center. So that's the quickest solution for hyperscale. Also for community benefit, I still want us to explore storage room data center models and see how that can be used to speed up latency, also provide community benefit for people because, and again, I'm never gonna be a person that accepts things on the organizing side. I hate when folks say, well, it's gonna be this way anyway, what can we get from it? So I even hate this coming out of my mouth. But if there's going to be data centers, then we should figure out a way that we can benefit from it. I hate saying that. But if I am going to say it, yeah, then it's something that we should explore.
Can you say it again?
No.
So thank you. I kid because I love Robert and he knows that. But Robert's description of how he uses AI differs a bit from mine because I think as you do use some of the more precise systems as a lawyer that I use, I am able to have it give me what is Robert Dawkins going to yell at City Council about tonight. I mean, I can really load into it, and as a City Council member, I will say one of my frustrations around the data center pushback that we get, and I'll just speak very high level, is so many of the other solutions that we as a community are being pushed towards rely on data. It is, when we're looking at diminution of violent crime, we're being told we really need all these predictive analytics and we need all this. And that's a different argument that we can have where and whether that's appropriate. But that is how a number of our solutions to our problems are at least being looked at. And we can't speak out of both sides of our mouth. We can't say we're not going to allow data centers, but yet all of our solutions are grounded and rooted in data and in being able to differentiate things. So my question to you will be, how do we balance all of that in a way that is legitimate with where we are in 2026? Some of the solutions, the analog solutions, are not available to us. They are mostly digital solutions.
Thank you. So your question is, how do we balance regulation with just our needs and the benefits today? Oh, sorry guys. Okay. So I definitely I don't know. I just feel like the main answer is, of course, regulation. I feel like My perspective on AI is always that it should be used as a tool. It is a statistical tool. It finds semantic relationships between words and numbers and looks at trends. That is what it does. So it should never be able to replace humans in terms of therapy, emotions, actors, things like that, like things that are rooted in human emotion and experience. That is not its job. So I think when we talk about like mitigation, I think clearly defining our goals with AI would be the biggest benefit, because in that way we're able to use it as a powerful tool, as something that's statistical, that can find trends and identify, predict behavior, but not necessarily, we shouldn't be, like we're kind of just wasting energy on, using it as something other than, something that should be done by a human, because therapy, I'll just use that as a basic example. Some people think that it will be able to predict, and read human emotions just like, something statistical, to the extent that it would be a good therapist. And I think that when it comes, of course, you talk about ethical concerns with that, and why would you rely on an AI tool when you could just talk to a human? And so I think my perspective on it, not everybody's perspective, is just cutting out the use of these human-centered things, such as therapy, such as acting or art or something like that, because it comes at a time where it will be limited with all that is on the internet, and then it will just be learning from itself once again, and it won't, it's just like we need human creativity. So I think if we cut out the things that are strictly human, then we would be able to kind of focus on things that are more statistical, and we can reap those benefits while also kind of being able to cut out the excess stuff. So I think using it just strategically would be my.
And so Kim always has me thinking about something like, so what you got me thinking of here is eventually we're going to have to move to some type of agreement among everybody the same way, and it's still going to be folks that's going to not abide by it. But how we agree on medicine and what is medicine and what isn't medicine, and what's allowed is medical practice, and what's allowed and considered warfare and what's not considered warfare, and what's the violations from it, is going to move to that level. And I think it's our place to get folks like Ashley starting thinking about that, because there's going to have to be Geneva Conventions and all of this around the future of AI if we're going to make it effective and we're going to keep it from, being a burden. And it gets to the heart of what Ms. McElrath was asking, like where do we go and where is a data center a benefit, and where, I'm assuming I'm saying this right, Ms. McElrath, or where is it just a benefit of the corporation that can replace you?
Yes, because the experts tell you they cannot control AI. And we should not be moving ahead until we know how to control it, and we don't.
Oh, I got you. I guess the biggest thing is, since we've already opened Pandora's box and we got 36 of them, we can't really put it back in. But we've got to get going now, and freezing it. We're so tied into it that freezing it right now is not only something that we can't. It's what we can't really.
Yeah, those hyper data centers.
Yes,
that's out of range.
Yes, we need to figure out, a part of that's going to be how do we get around the hyperscale. So again, now that I'm getting old and got to go to the doctor all the time, I'll use my doctor excuse. I got to figure out how to cook without messing up my cholesterol. So the data center is Crisco. I love Crisco, and that's what I want to fry with. But I got to figure out how to fry with something better than Crisco. I got to figure out how to do this with olive oil or something like that. So the hyperscale is the Crisco. And I got to figure out how to still eat my fried chicken, but not suffer as much cholesterol. But I'm still going to eat the fried chicken that's going to kill me. But it's going to kill me less if I don't use the Crisco.
I appreciate that analogy you just used. Thank you for that research. Thank you for that data. Thank you for having this conversation. When you're sharing some of the stuff that you're saying, what I'm hearing is Charlotte workers and workforce development. But it brings me to my question: where should I build a data center? Because it's kind of given the same fear that gentrification gives. It's fearful when you don't participate in it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We launched the iPhone here. Many of you might have remembered when your phone used to say 3G. Right? We were afraid that 5G was going to burn your brain. And now we got that. We're getting data faster than we've ever gotten it. So my question to you guys as advisors, if you were in that space, what should I look for? Building a data center, bringing in a workforce to train that data center, and making Charlotte the hub that owns data centers.
And again, so I'm glad that you asked that. I think that's been the issue that we're trying to figure out. The biggest solution to any of this is to move off of the hyperscale model as quick as possible, because hyperscales are going to be positioned where people don't want them because of their footprint, how big they are, the amount of electricity they use, all of that. The edge data center is the one that I think we should be spending our most time on. They're small, the footprint would be spread out all over the city. Everybody would have to have them. Their environmental impact would be less. Their cooling system would be the best used. Again, that's going to be the thing that I think we should use, and then look at some of these other smaller models and get off of hyperscale. That's one. Second, as far as what the community needs, the community needs to be involved and not just subject matter experts. Folks said that I was really harsh, and I wasn't really trying to be harsh on Dante when she was mentioning subject matter experts and talk to them first. My point was you need to talk to the community first and then talk to subject matter experts and say, here's what the community is saying. Here's problems that we have. How can you adjust to that? But we need to make sure that the dialogue is open to everybody. Us at Action NC didn't think that that was happening with the city with its process before, because we're calling at some council people to say, hey, did you get an appointment on this task force? And they were like, I didn't know. So we thought to stop it. We're hoping this new task force, and the way that I hear it's going, it's going to be made up of subject matter experts. It's going to be made up of community people. And I think, Kim, there's a task force, and then there's another step for community also, right? We need, and what we're going to try to get is as much info, because we need to get as many people involved. I will say, I don't know if Terry Bradley is in the room, but I do think that when we're talking about not the stakeholder piece, but the community piece, I think the city has not effectively used CRC to reach out to the community to make sure that the community knows. The biggest part, I think, of the city that knows how to get community involvement is Community Relations Committee, and I don't see CRC at the table for making sure that every neighborhood association knows something's going on around data centers. CRC has the ability to send out alerts and stuff, so I'm hoping CRC will be in use more to make sure that the community knows the opportunity to get involved. And lastly, again, I think that the Johnson C. Smiths, the UNC Charlottes, and all of that have a role in being the independent study groups to make sure that everybody's involved, and it's not just Duke Energy at the table saying, here, we're subject matter experts. I think that you can get subject matter experts, not only from the community, but we should be using Johnson C. Swift, UNC Charlotte, Queens, and all of that for the research. Anything you want to add?
Okay, in efforts to make sure that we get the last few questions asked, we're going to shorten your questions to 30 seconds, please, and 1 minute for the answer. Thank you. Ms. Jackie, you're next.
Don't we wish all of our CMS students were like Ashley? My question has to do, you were talking about research. Can you talk about like maybe the balance of land grant universities? I think about ag extension and how sometimes things aren't equal.
Right? So I think, Mr. Chairman, I think we would need you on that. Because again, what I learned a long time ago, if you don't know about it, don't say you know about it, because then you look stupid for saying it. So I don't know what I come out and say about that. I don't really know, but it seems like something we should be working on. So again, like this brother pointed out, how we need to be spending some more time beating on the corporations to have them come up and help us. I need to also spend more time researching what you're saying and figuring out how to get that involved in our process. I know it's not an answer, but I'd rather not lie to you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. This may have been answered. I'm always late with my questions and then they end up getting answered. Anyway, if smaller scale facilities like the edge data centers that you talked about can meet some of the same technological needs with less community impact, what do you think prevents municipalities from incentivizing or requiring more concentrated facilities and communities, especially communities that are already disproportionately environmentally?
Yeah, it all goes back to everything else, NIMBYism. You know, if I can not have it in my neighborhood and I can put it in your neighborhood, then I would do that. But let's also not forget that one huge data center over 100 megawatts is putting out so much that it takes so many different edge centers to do that work, that if you're a business, you're going to want, you know, if I've got my choice of building you a nice cooperative grocery store in your neighborhood, or build one Costco that everybody can come to and get to. If I'm a business, I'd rather build you that Costco. So it's all not that it's impossible to do, but for a business, they would rather build one giant hyperscale and figure out a way to manage that than to build 25. And then let's not forget NIMBYism too. A whole lot of neighborhoods wouldn't want a data center. And if we go to edge, that's going to be the hard part for Councilwoman Owens and all of those. When we do go to edge, then making neighborhoods say, you're going to take it, because they're going to be there. If you think they get mad and fight a Family Dollar, wait until you tell them you're going to put an edge data center next to your house. But that's going to be what it's going to take.
Hey, good morning. Congratulations on your presentation. It was awesome. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you both. Butter flavored Crisco is what you want to use frying the chicken. You all love it. But if the hypercenter is the Crisco, butter flavored Crisco, what's the air fryer? In terms of this whole AI data thing, I'm an AI advocate. I build massive systems and business models with it, so I love it. Happy meeting.
Yeah, again, and this is going to be, we're not going to put Jordan on the spot, sitting back there at the back of the room, but it's going to be legislative in, I see you sitting here too, Mr. President, it's going to be national, congressional level. What do we set? Because the bad part about just on the city level that we're working on, Kim can say what Charlotte City Council's going to end at. That don't mean that that's what Mid-Hill's going to end at. That's what Huntersville's going to end at. It's going to take the state, and here's the truth of the matter. I would love to even sit here sometimes and make it a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a corporate issue. So when we're looking at it in North Carolina, we're going to get a lot of data centers. This is a big issue. We're going to get a lot of data centers because they're trying to fix the brakes. But if I could move to North Carolina, I would as a business because of the regulation set that makes it good to be here. And again, Kim wants to record that too, I know. Because everything isn't the city's fault. A lot of it is on state, which we can't fix. But I'm not at the state. I'm here in Charlotte, so I'll be here to beat on you again next Monday. But it's going to take figuring out how to get legislators to address things that are not siloed in taking care of businesses first. Does that make sense? And again, it isn't just Democrat or Republican. Because Bank of America dropped money on both sides.
Yep, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All righty, we're gonna move on to the last question, which will be Ken. After Ken, we're gonna give you guys a few minutes to say your final words, and then we'll move on to announcements. Go ahead, Ken.
Having been a journalist in this place for over 50 years, we, the city, county, and the state, created this data center monster because they went out and recruited these corporate giants to come here, and now that they're here, with others still considering a move here, demanding these negatively impacting support systems. You wanted world-class status, but now you're dealing with it, what it includes, and its cost. Can we look the man in the mirror and honestly claim that we didn't do this? After all, you picked up the frozen snake, put him in your chest, and now that he's worn out and is biting you, you want to get mad because the snake bit you, but you knew it was a snake.
Yeah, that's 100%, Ken. And again, I moved here in Charlotte in the mid-90s. When I moved in Charlotte, I moved on Spruce Street, Wilmore, and I used to walk by a whole bunch of dilapidated, beat-up property, and a whole lot. And what I used to hear from people all the way back then, when I was in the NAACP at the time, is we want better housing, we want professional sports, they got it, but there's always some externalities that come with it. And the externalities that come with it is when you wanted the football team, they were going to put it over on the west side, and where they were going to put it. You know, when you wanted better housing, you were wanting housing. People weren't wanting affordable housing. They were like, why we can't have this housing? Well, they did. We tried to tell people, we buy ugly houses is not your friend. Don't sell your generational wealth away. You know, this has been my fight for years. Charlotte got what it wanted, but it was wrong. We can't go back and fix that now. All we can do is try to change it now and mitigate it now. But hopefully, from what you're saying, people are listening and learning and don't do it again, because we'll repeat the same thing. We'll dig out of this hole just to create another hole for ourselves. So I think folks need to be centered, focused on what's good for us as a community, as opposed to what brings more jobs here. What I found when I moved to Charlotte, that if you could put a price on anything, folks in Charlotte will take the price quicker than they will take figuring out what's the best for them in their future. People in Charlotte were quick to say, this is the quickest path to me to get this, and I will deal with the consequences later. And that's until we change that, Charlotte's gonna wind up being what it's gonna be. Folks say Charlotte strives to be Atlanta. They never strive to be Atlanta. They strive to be the best Charlotte that they could be. But the best Charlotte that they could be was based off of case studies from other cities, as opposed to what's best for its residents. That's what I woke up trying to fight for every day.
We have an online question from Faith Triggs of Habitat. Yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg released a statement to lessen fears of AI and data centers. He wants to make sure firms are giving back to community as service as these data centers expand. How do communities balance financial handouts given to benefit communities as buyouts versus long-term damage?
I'll take that one if you don't mind, Ashley. So again, looking back again, what happened over years was businesses in the beginning would not give you a community benefit. It was so hard to get a community benefit from a business. We fought for years. Then businesses accepted, folks are going to ask for a community benefit. So how do we go and give them what's best for us as a buyout instead of a benefit? And that's what's become the pattern and the practice, and Zuckerberg is just using it. So I'm going to take this from you. If I'm going to take this from you, let me figure out what the quickest buyout I can give them. And then I can come back and take that away from them too. So the quickest thing to do is take your personal stuff and then couch it in a large argument of what I'm doing for your community. And then I come back and I get it. So let's look at I-77 as the example. That's the prime example. I will give you a grocery store. I will give you a rec center. I will give you whatever. You don't have the power to do it. But even if I did have the power to do it, I gave you a rec center or a grocery store in a neighborhood that I just took your house and your generational wealth for. So was a grocery store today worth taking Miss Ivory's family's property for the next 100 years for a grocery store? The average lifetime of a small grocery store is probably 4 years. They close all of the time. So I bought you some time by saying, look at this, I'm gonna give you a grocery store as a benefit. Then I'm gonna put you out of your house. I'll let that neighborhood part die off. Then I'll come back and gentrify the neighborhood, and the grocery store will be gone because we'll replace it with a Harris Teeter for the people that I just displaced you for. But I gave you a 4-year benefit, and you fell for it. That's what businesses do, and Mark Zuckerberg just giving it to you on the same scale of what they're doing to you every day here in Charlotte, whether it was the payback will pave over you. And I-77 is going to either displace you or it's going to take your property and your generational wealth. But in trade for it, they gave you microtransit and they gave you a grocery store and they told you that they gave you a benefit.
Amen. That was good. I don't have nothing to say. That was good. That's the truth. That's the truth. We'll give you guys 2 minutes apiece to give your closing comments, please.
I'm only gonna give a minute, she can have the rest, but I wanna say how proud we are to have Ashley because, we every year keep some interns. Most of the interns that I look at now, we've kept some interns now that are here in Charlotte doing some major work over the years, and they were our interns. We've also had interns that left and they never came back. We're hoping, I said this to Ashley a lot, I was talking to Dante and a few of the other Ivy League educated people that we have in Charlotte. It is hard when you are Charlotte to keep Ivy League educated people here when New York City is going to offer you a lot of money as soon as you graduate. We are proud that Ashley worked with us. We're proud she's Charlottean is in Ivy League, and we're hoping that her commitment will also be to Charlotte. And again, go make your money, but I hope after that you will come back and consider leadership here in Charlotte. And that's it. We're proud and glad we had you this summer.
I just wanted to say, based on the closing kind of discussion, that I think it emphasized the need for community education because people are not going to know they're being tricked. I think it's hard to predict the future. It's hard to predict the full advantages and drawbacks of data centers, but also like new industry. Like if people are, you're thinking they're short-sighted on like jobs or a grocery store or something like that, people are going to see their we look at all the, it's not just us, of course, they're building data centers and people that think, they are going to attract industries such as those really drought-prone areas because they want jobs, they want the benefits. Like, yes, governments can be greedy in terms of, we want this data center because then we'll get more taxes and we'll get more money. But in terms of the citizens as well, they might see some things as like economic opportunity. So having people to educate the public about the full kind of deal and the fine print is so important because people won't always know that, and I won't fault them for that. And you just can't see in the future. We don't know we didn't know that, attracting big banks and businesses, and now we're attracting, of course, a lot of people. Like a lot of people want to move to Charlotte because of the economic opportunities, which is a benefit, but also, dang, now we have housing problems, and that just comes with being a city. It's just things we're always going to have to deal with. But then the alternative is just being a really rural agrarian state, and then having kind of little economic activity, and those people are struggling too because the farmers are going to deal with issues. Problems are always going to arise. So yes, public education is extremely important, and being able to balance long-term goals, I think, is something that as a community we will need to focus on moving forward. So thank you.
Oh.